Hello everyone and welcome to episode 24 of the Six Sided Podcast. As usual, I'm your host, the Taxman, and I got a lot of things to get into in tonight's episode, but I'm going to start off real quick. We've got a ton of new subscribers on the YouTube page, so I want to give them all a quick shout out. As I usually do, once again, if you subscribe to us on the YouTube page, I make sure I get you a shout out on the next available show. So with that being said, I want to give a shout out to Jana Gaming, 47AG Records, Static Peck, Underdog and Wife Play, Black Ninja, Space Nurse 71, Power God, The Irish Kid, Maximiliano Ado, Joshua Smith, Under the Ears, Luca Puka, Gamerboy 909, Tita Vlogs, Uncensored Gamers, and Imprudent Batman 2018. Thank you all for subscribing to the YouTube page. Once again, if you subscribe to the page and you don't hear your name, it's probably because your profile is set to private. Therefore, I can't see your name to give you a shout out. However, if you drop me a line, I will be sure to get you a shout out on the next available episode. So like I said at the top of the show, I have a lot of information to get into this episode, and a lot of it is in regards to the direction that I'm going to go with the podcast moving forward. Now, if you've been with us since day one, you'll know that this podcast has been covering the weekly episodic tapings of Impact Wrestling, as well as covering the pay-per-view shows. Now, I've enjoyed doing it, and obviously I really enjoy watching the product, otherwise why the hell would I be doing this? But I just feel like there's so many really good podcasts out there that are covering the week-to-week episodes of Impact Wrestling. Podcasts such as my good friend Robert from Robert Does Wrestling, the guys from the Clock Cleaners podcast, obviously the OGs with the Impact Lounge, my good friends Kyle and Trent from We Talk Impact, and many more. There's a lot of great weekly podcasts that follow the episodic tapings of Impact Wrestling, and I feel like maybe I can try and do something different. So what I'm going to be doing now is I'm still going to do a weekly show. It's not, however, going to be a straight-up review of Impact Wrestling every week like I have been doing. It's going to be focusing more on different topics pertinent to that week. So one week it might be focusing in on a business story related to Impact Wrestling. One week it might be an interview with somebody related to Impact Wrestling. One week it might be predicting the future of, let's say, a pay-per-view or set of tapings, or a talent who's coming in, or a talent that's departing, and what that means for the company. To me, it's going to be able to focus a lot more on the newsworthy things of Impact Wrestling, rather than just all of the matches and storylines, because like I said, with the other podcasts, they do such a great job of covering all of that. It just feels like I'm not stagnant. I don't want to come off that way, but I just feel like I can be better used in a different type of capacity. So I'm going to try this out. I think it's the right direction to go, and I think you guys are really going to enjoy the product. And that's going to start with tonight. What I'm also going to do is, instead of covering show by show, once the tapings are done in a certain amount of time, like for instance, tonight is the last episode of the tapings from Mexico City, then I'm just going to run down what happened in that set of tapings, kind of talk about the highlights, what we were introduced to as Impact fans, what we can be looking forward to in the future, kind of big feuds that they're setting up and things of that nature. So it allows me to be a lot more inclusive of what's happening with the product on a whole, while still being able to focus on specific things that maybe aren't talked about in other podcasts, like things on the business side, like things headed towards the future. A few of those I'm going to talk about in tonight's episode. So that's kind of my thoughts. That's the direction that this show is going to run. And also, keeping in mind with all that, if you are listening to this program on one of the many streaming or downloadable services, whether it's iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, podcasts, Spotify, all the ones where you find, steal, trade, barter, download your episode of the Six Sided Podcast, your program will remain the same always. You're going to get the intro, the crux of the program, and the finish every week. It's never going to change. What is going to change is how things are presented on the YouTube page. So on the YouTube page, now you're going to be getting the intro, the meat of the program, and the outro, and then attached to that video, there's going to be a few other videos that are hitting the talking points that I've hit in that particular episode. Case in point, I did a great episode, last one actually, with Robert from Robert Does Wrestling, and a lot of the stuff came out with the whole Matt Hardy situation. I had included that in the whole episode, thinking that that was the way to go, and in hindsight it wasn't, so I had broken that off in kind of a quick cut and have that as its own video after the fact. So that's kind of the direction I'm going to be going. You're still going to be able to listen to the crux of the program in one sitting if you are, like I said, on the streaming, one of the streaming or downloadable sites. But on YouTube, it's going to be a lot more of the, we'll say, quick hitters, that whole, 5 to 10 minute programming, so that you guys are able to, and I know it's hard when you're on YouTube, it's hard to dedicate an hour of your time. I understand that now, I didn't at first, so I'm kind of doing this to give you guys a little thank you for sticking with me, and that I am actually paying attention to what's going on. So it's going to give you guys a better listening experience. It's going to be able to allow me to get my point across better. And like I said, on the streaming and downloadable sites, it's a lot easier to be listening to those, on your car ride to work, or, it's easier to hit the pause button, I find, when it's on iTunes rather than when it's on YouTube, for example. So that's kind of my thoughts, why I'm going to be doing that, and that's the direction that I'm going to be headed. So, with that being said, sit back, pop a top, and let's get into talking about some Impact Wrestling, starting with the tapings that just finished up in Mexico City, Mexico. So this set of tapings had started 1 month ago. We've had, obviously, now 4 weeks of tapings from Mexico City, Mexico. They took place in September. They have now wrapped up their final episode of airing. That was on October 11th, obviously, of 2018. That's the go-home show for Bound For Glory. Now, there's been, we'll say, mixed reviews, not on the shows itself, but the fact that these episodes emanated from Mexico in a build towards Bound For Glory. I know that there was a few people who were a little bit critical about the taped episodes that were done. I'm going to discuss that a little bit later in this episode. What I want to focus on right now is kind of the highlights coming out of the Mexico City taping. So, a few personal highlights for me. Obviously, in the first episode, we got to see Drago and Aerostar again. I don't think I've seen them since the Redemption pay-per-view era of Impact Wrestling from earlier this year, so great to see them in the ring. I really enjoyed the crowd, actually. You could definitely tell it's different than the crowd from Toronto, and obviously far different from the Dead Zone. And what I like about it is you didn't really see any drop-off of energy from the crowd, although I will say that there were certain episodes, and maybe it's just the audio that I received here, maybe you guys heard the same thing, maybe you agree or disagree, but there's a few episodes where the crowd seemed muted. You could tell that they were fired up, like watching them in the stands, just it didn't translate well on television. I'm not sure why that is, but as a whole, I really thought that the crowd carried the energy all the way through the tapings, kind of a carry over from the energy from the crowds that we saw from the Toronto tapings. A big plus, too, that I thought that we got in these Mexico tapings, and again, at this point I'm going to talk about a little bit later as well, but got to be introduced to some fantastic talent. In this episode that just aired, the Go Home show for Bound For Glory in particular, we got to see Jack Evans. He was part of that 4-way match. This guy looked unbelievable. I've never seen him wrestle before. I'm definitely going to have to go back and check out some matches for him. I'm sure Mike Larkin probably knows every goddamn thing about him, but yeah, he really stood out for me. I thought he was fantastic in that match. A few episodes ago, Fabi Apache, I hope I pronounced that name right, her match against Tessa Blanchard for the Knockouts Division title, that to me was a pay-per-view quality match. I have never seen Fabi wrestle before. I was so impressed with her. everything looked good. She moved well in the ring. She sold well. She had a ton of power, and she really, in my opinion, took Tessa to the limit and really brought out everything in Tessa that we've wanted to see out of her. We wanted to see that killer instinct, right? We wanted to see her respawn from getting a serious beating, and that's what Fabi was giving her. And I was really impressed with her, and I'm very much hoping that we can see her back in a Impact Wrestling ring in the near future. Also from tonight's episode, I know I'm bouncing around a little bit, but what did you guys think of Maximo in the Grado match? I thought that was fantastic. You know me, I'm a bit of a sucker for the comedy wrestling when it's done in a respectable way towards the wrestling product, and that's what I thought that this match was. It was fantastic. I want to see myself some more Maximo. I think that guy's tremendous, and the pink hair mohawk is just over the top. Just what a fantastic character. Another big talking point that we have coming out of tonight's episode and heading in towards Bound for Glory, and I'm going to run down the Bound for Glory card in a couple of minutes, is the Allie and James Mitchell connection. Now, we got a huge piece of information. I know that some of you aren't about the whole, blending of fantasy and reality and wrestling, but I enjoy it. I enjoyed it when Su Yung and Madison Rayne had their whole build-up. I enjoyed all the Rosemary stuff. Like, I like that kind of blending, that storytelling in wrestling. So, for me, this was fantastic. So we found out that Allie is essentially without a soul. This is obviously dating back to her being put in a casket by Su Yung. She has now made a deal with the devil, if you will, as in the devil himself, James Mitchell. So I'm very, very curious to see what his involvement will be moving forward in the Bound for Glory match. That would be Allie and Su Yung. But this is just one of those little wrinkles that Impact throws in, and it's just like, it ties so much together, and it's such a great talking point. And I thought that this small vignette, and it was only like 2 minutes long, just like blew the doors open to that feud and that kind of, we'll say, fantasy horror story aura that they've been kind of pursuing with Allie and with Su Yung and with characters of that nature. Also, super excited that Willie Mack has been announced as the tag team partner for Rich Swann in his match, or sorry, I should say their match, against Matt Sydal and the returning Ethan Page. I have not seen a lot of Willie Mack. I've seen a couple of clips on YouTube here and there, but I've never seen a full match. But I'm really excited for seeing him in the ring, and that video package I thought was fantastic. You hit the high points, you show what the guy's about. Rich Swann's obviously excited about it, and I'm looking forward to what he can bring. Also, somebody else that we were introduced to in the tapings here, once again in the final night, was Kara. She was in the match with Tessa Blanchard. Another fantastic women's talent that I obviously would have never been introduced to if it wasn't for the tapings happening in Mexico City. So I thought that she put on a hell of a show with Tessa Blanchard. Obviously, Tessa gets the win, as she should, moving into Bound for Glory. But just once again, being in a different environment, being able to be exposed to people to wrestlers that you've never seen before, it's great for everybody. Great for the wrestlers, great for the fans, great for everybody. Once again, another point that I'm going to get into a little bit later in the show. And lastly, I have to make mention of this because I've been harping on it for a while. I was super happy to see Kiera Hogan get the win in their tag match, Kiera Hogan and Allie versus Su Yung and the Undead Maid of Honor. I've been saying for a while now that I really felt like Kiera needed a big win. Like she just, to me, she has all the tools. She needs to start getting kind of a push here. I know that we didn't see her really used after the fact in a match. However, I thought her getting the win, especially over Su Yung in that match, was fantastic and was really, really smart decision building her on the way forward. And once again, she's obviously intertwined in the whole Allie and Su Yung match at Bound for Glory as well. So very curious to see where that goes and her involvement, as well as, like I said, the aforementioned James Mitchell. Now, I know a lot of people were down on the build for Bound for Glory. I saw a lot of rumbling groaning, whatever you want to say, on Twitter. Especially last week's episode before tonight's. Obviously, tonight's was a go-home show for Bound for Glory. You can honestly put all that to bed. This show delivered everything that you wanted in a go-home show. You had all of your storylines advanced heading into Bound for Glory. Everything's starting to get tied together. I loved the LAX and OGs ending the show with a brawl, but you don't see any kind of culmination of it. You don't see what happens. It was a fantastic way to cut it. I really enjoyed, like I said, Willie Mack being introduced as Rich Swann's partner for that tag match. My only criticism, I will say, and it's not even a big criticism, but it's just one of those me things. You guys know how I am. So they have the 6-man tag match tonight, which at least was in the main event, so I thought that was a smart way to go. But you had Falaba, Eddie Edwards, and Johnny Mundo, Johnny Impact, Johnny Morrison, whatever you want to call them, versus the team of Killer Cross, Moose, and Austin Aries. And before I get any further in that, I love the whole Money Moose thing. I think it's so fantastic, but I cannot help but think to myself, every single time that I see Moose come through the curtain, there's a certain song that sticks in my head. Every time that Moose Money comes through that curtain, I can't help but get a little bit of this feeling in my head. That's right, a little Mason Betha for y'all, but yeah, I love Moose's character development that he's finally getting, but I digress a little bit. Getting into this match, my problem was that I don't like when individuals who are supposed to have a big match at, in a few days at a pay-per-view, when they meet in the ring and wrestle in the ring. It takes something away from me seeing that right before you're going to see them at a big pay-per-view setting. And I also wasn't overly, and I know that the announcers sold it, and most people would have probably found it great. I don't like that Johnny Impact takes the loss from Austin Aries with the Brainbuster to end the match. Just, to me, that's one of those things that's like, you could have done a 6-man tag and that whole time not had, or you could have teased at least Eddie Edwards and Moose facing off in the match, but never have them touch. And you could have teased Austin Aries and Johnny Impact in the match at the same time, but never touch. The anticipation is able to build up a little bit better than that, but whatever, I digress a little bit. Maybe it's just me, maybe you guys agree or disagree. Obviously, let me know in the comments section of the video here, or in the comments section if you're listening online, but I digress a little bit. To me, that's one of those nitpicky things. Did it kill the show? Of course not. This, for a go-home show, was exactly everything that it needed to be. And heading into Bound for Glory, anybody who said that they weren't building this card properly, like I said, that whole thing is shot to shit now for sure. So, speaking of Bound for Glory, because we had so many tie-ins with the show, both tonight and all the Mexico shows, although a lot of people didn't see it at the time, just running down the card real quick, we have LAX versus the OGs, obviously the culmination of that big feud. Although I don't think it ends here. We have the Concrete Jungle Death Match is what that match will be. That's a stipulation. Obviously, we have Austin Aries versus Johnny Impact. That's for Austin Aries' Impact World Championship. We have OVE and Sami Callihan versus Brian Cage and the Luchador Brothers. I'm really looking forward to that match. I easily could see that one being one of the matches of the night. We have Eddie Edwards versus Moose in a singles match. I know a lot of people are kind of looking at this one like, I think that this match might over-deliver, especially with the way, especially if they let these guys kind of dictate the match. I think that they should dictate it. I think it's going to be a really good match. We have obviously Tessa Blanchard defending her Knockouts title against Ty Valkyrie. I know a lot of people were pissed about the build to this one because Ty Valkyrie essentially challenged her over Skype, but it is what it is. Did I like that part of the build? No. Do I think that this match has a show stealer potential? Of course I do. Two of the top two of the top women competitors in the planet are facing off in a pay-per-view match. I'm expecting big things out of this one, and I think it's going to deliver big time. Obviously, aforementioned, we have Matt Sydal and Ethan Page versus Rich Swann and Willie Mack. Once again, I'm very much looking forward to seeing Willie Mack in the ring. We have Ali, with or without any involvement, with James Mitchell versus Su Yung in a singles match. And we have Eli Drake versus versus an opponent who must be from New York City. So start the Chris Jericho rumor mill, because we all know, although Chris Jericho is from Winnipeg, you idiots, he was born in New York City, New York. So, yeah, maybe it happens. If it does happen, though, I would love to see Jericho have a bit of an extended run with the company. I don't think it serves any purpose to have him come in, either do the job or beat Eli Drake as a one and done, and that's it, and then he's gone. I would love if he comes in and they're able to build a program, and if it's with Eli Drake, then fantastic, because he's been dying for a main event spot and a big push, and he, in my opinion, he deserves it big time. And who better in the world than the best in the world at what he does, Chris Jericho? Would be a fantastic first off match at Bound for Glory, if that's what's indeed happening. And second off, a feud between these two. Could you imagine? First off, the in-ring work we all know would be fantastic, but these two on the mic verbally eviscerating each other, Jesus, that would put butts in seats, as I believe Mike Tenay put it one time. Or maybe that was Tony Schiavone. But anyways, just seeing if that's the direction that everything goes here at Bound for Glory, wow, we're in for a big lead into 2019 in Impact Wrestling, and nobody deserves it more, in my opinion, than Eli Drake. This guy's been absolutely dynamite for the last, 3, 4, almost going on 5 years, so would be really good to see him get a really big push coming out of it. So that's the card for Bound for Glory. Obviously, a lot of people were down on the build for it. Me personally, I would obviously, any day of the week, much rather see an underbuilt card and an over-delivered pay-per-view rather than a pay-per-view with a crazy build-up and everybody's so hyped, and then you get to the pay-per-view and it's flatter than a plate full of piss and terrible, and you want your money back. I think that like I said, all the naysayers, whatever, the detractors saying that, this is the worst build that they've ever had for Bound for Glory. I don't agree with that. Was it the way that everybody thought it should go? No. But at the same time, like I just said, I would rather always have the build underwhelm a little bit and then the pay-per-view blow the fucking doors off everybody. And if this thing is even half as good as Slammiversary is still, in my opinion, the best North American pay-per-view that's been done by any wrestling company this year, period. No equivocations. North American. Keyword there. If Bound for Glory is even half that good, then they're setting themselves up for a good spot. And I'm just really looking forward to that pay-per-view. And obviously in front of a real hot live New York crowd, man, you won't be able to beat that. So looking forward to what happens, obviously, at Bound for Glory. Alright, so before I get out of here for the night, I just want to say a big thank you once again to everybody for checking us out. If this is your first time checking us out, or if you came back because maybe you didn't like the first couple episodes and you're checking us out again because of the new programming change, thank you very much for coming back. If you've been with us since day one or episode 23, doesn't matter to me. I'm very grateful and happy to have you along for the ride. You can find us on YouTube, youtube.com/c/six-sided podcast. Please make sure you subscribe and obviously leave a bunch of comments on the videos because I love to interact with everybody. You can also download, stream, steal, whatever you want to say, the program. Type in Six-Sided Podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Podcast, Spotify. there's a whole plethora of them. Essentially, if you use a certain type of streaming service, I guarantee you we're on there. You can also reach me on Twitter at 6_podcast. You can also email me anytime with questions, comments, concerns. If you want to be a part of the program, anything like that. 6sidepod@gmail.com. And I want to get into the guest thing real quick too. Just because I'm revamping the show, I'm planning on having a lot more guests on the show. Obviously, you've heard of people like Mike, like Robert, who have been on the show a couple of different times. Trent and Kyle, obviously, and Jenna, who did this Women's Evolution special with me. I have a few big things planned in the next coming weeks. I'm very much looking forward to that. So keep it locked, and if you want to be part of the show, obviously you guys know how to get a hold of me. So with all that being said, I hope you guys enjoy the new direction of the show. I'm very much looking forward to starting a little bit fresh and giving you guys some great content. And once again, thank you very much for checking me out. And follow me on all your social media outlets, as I just previously mentioned. And until next time, this is the Taxman saying, take care of yourselves and each other. Good night, everyone.